Hello, Bainbridge. I'm Stefan Goldby, President CEO of the Bainbridge Chamber. Ahead of the upcoming elections, welcome to this community conversation with one of the candidates for City Council. In the interests of fairness, we are asking all candidates the same 12 questions that knowledgeable Chamber members helped us write, though a candidate's answers may lead to individualized follow-ups or requests for clarification. Each candidate has up to 45 minutes to answer all 12 questions. None of the candidates have seen the questions in advance, and their answers will be presented in full. With all that in mind, let's say hello to today's candidate. Would you care to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Kristen Hytopoulos. I'm currently serving the at-large position and seeking re-election.
Nicely done. Okay, question one. Could you begin just by describing some of your experience working with different stakeholders in the community, businesses, organizations, residents?
Sure. Well, I mean, in my professional life, I work with people going through divorce and trying to avoid court, keeping their families together post-divorce and avoiding conflict. Obviously on city council, I work with all sorts of people coming to me when they're struggling with working with the city, homeowners, people trying to process permits, et cetera, and struggling with that. People who are interested in seeing legislation passed, not interested in legislation passed, people worried about environmental protection. Business owners worried about businesses, people working on committees, my colleagues, legislators, regional representatives on other bodies, just about everything. And in the past, I've served on a number of boards, Helpline House, Marge Williams Center. I worked on issues in the school district when I was, as a mom, Odyssey parent, trying to make sure that the programs stayed together. So worked with a lot of parents. So I've had a pretty diverse. I've also worked as an activist in the community prior to my first term on council, on issues related to the city. So advocating to council members for things on behalf of the community. So I think I've worked with a pretty diverse range of stakeholders.
What personally makes you want to be a council member for the next 4 years?
Well, a lot of things. I mean, what's always caused me to want to be, this would be my third term, to be a city council member is, first of all, my love for the island. The reason I moved here was I didn't move here actually just for the school district or even for the school district or just for the natural beauty. I was quite aware of the reason why the island incorporated. I knew the story before I moved here from where I first alighted in North Kitsap, and I was trying to move to the island because I thought it was really exciting that a community was so intentional in its planning that it had incorporated the entire island to try to avoid what was happening all across the country that for any of us who moved here from other places had seen happening. And so I've always wanted to be involved in making sure we can carry through on that. And we're deep in that right now. I've been involved in that now for 2 terms over 14 years. And I would like to be sure that as we really face the most difficult challenges of affordable housing, regional growth pressures, climate change, et cetera, that we have people who have deep knowledge and good skills to be able to decision-making and conflict resolution skills to be able to address those problems.
You may have sort of preempted this somewhat, but what would you say are the top 3 specific concerns that you hear from islanders?
Oh, they haven't changed a lot, although one is becoming more and more, I hope I'm clear. The ones that I've heard from the first time I've moved here and before I moved here, again, would be preserving the island's character, sense of place, and, making sure that and as we grow, that we don't exceed the carrying capacity of the island. So growth pressures, right? That includes that we don't exceed our how much water we have, et cetera, that we grow well. Another one is that is the one that I think that is finally starting to, I think people are really getting, I've heard for a long time, but more and more, is affordable housing. And so I think people are finally getting that it is a problem that affects all of us. It's not just a feel-good problem. And then obviously climate change is a problem for us as well. Though I guess I'd say that more and more we're hearing about access to medical care. It's really funny. Who'd have thought that when we were doing the because I was going to say, I think I kind of combined two things in the first one, which is with the growth pressures and preserving the sense of place and character of the island. But I'm going to throw on there the health, the lack of access to healthcare, honestly, because I found it really telling that when we were having the first big community meeting on the Winslow sub-area plan, how many times that came up. I wouldn't have thought of that as something that when people come to talk about what they need in Winslow, what it should look and feel like, that would come up. And as someone who serves on our public health board regionally, it's constantly what we're talking about. And it's not just on the island where we've lost a huge amount of our primary care. And we know we have a huge lack of hospital access, et cetera, in the county. So I think that's actually becoming a major issue for us as well.
In the Winslow sub-area plan and the comprehensive plan, we have a generational opportunity to plot the path forward for the next 20 years on the island. What do you think are the top 3 things those documents must create for Bainbridge Island?
Well, again, both for our local need and now for the state mandates that we're facing. And some of our state mandates I expect to push back against, but this one I don't. We are required to create capacity for certain income tiers on the island. So historically, we've been assigned growth targets. Most of us know that. But now we're being assigned that, which I find actually more compelling, that we're creating capacity for certain income tiers. We're not just supposed to take a bunch of market rate growth, but we need to figure out how to make capacity in our zoning for that. And so what we must do, and it is the main focus, I think, so far of the council and everybody else involved in this planning, that we're going to need to make we're going to not only need to make the zoning available, but to make it compel developers basically to make affordable housing. So that will have to be addressed. We need to address more walkability and just getting at people out of their car generally. So ability to move, that however Winslow grows, there's permeability, passage around more, that we have better sidewalks, et cetera. And above all, that we preserve what we have at the end of the day. So I have always been a big advocate for, at the very least, and I feel like the community feels really strongly about this, that Winslow Way itself, that we preserve the gem of what we have there, even if we wind up putting some real density in some pockets to accomplish what we need to. If we don't preserve what makes, Winslow special, what's the point? So I think the character is really important. And I'm really excited about the fact that the process has now included not only an equity lens and a climate lens, but there is actually a character lens that is being used in this process. And that's really reflective of the community.
If we get a little more wonky for one moment, if you could change one thing in the city's zoning code, what would it be?
Interesting. One thing in the zoning code.
I can widen it to one thing in the code in general.
One thing in the code in general.
Just to narrow your field.
Yeah, I mean, that's difficult because there's all kinds of problems in the code, right? So, I would say, we may get really wonky. 1821, our affordable housing ordinance is just absolutely worthless. And anybody who cares about affordable housing knows that we really just need to toss it and start over again. So that's easy. There are many, many sections of code that need to be tweaked and either thrown out and redone. So that's kind of hard to say.
The easy questions.
Pardon me?
I'm not here to ask the easy questions.
Yeah, and I'll say, for example, when we look at what's going on, when we're looking at what's not working in Winslow, what hasn't worked, the way we've been doing, we've had this idea of bonus density to try to encourage affordable housing and a lot of other things. And I think I agree with people. I think most people who've paid attention for a long time don't think that's the way to do it. What we should be doing is we should be zoning for the density we actually want there. And then we should be requiring affordable housing when we do that, create that density, or creating affordable housing in other ways. But our zoning needs to be transparent, and that is something that has not been the case in the past. And if if the way a developer gets from here to what is actually constructed on the ground is not transparent enough, that is how we get to the place where the public sees something built and asks, how did that happen? So that's kind of a vague response because I'm not explaining exactly how that gets there. But when that is possible, that's a problem.
So let's stay with the visible part of housing for a moment. Within the city's housing action plan is almost agreement that housing diversity and supply on the island must change for the sake of the community. What kinds of housing do you think are the most important and why within that?
The kind of housing that we need that we don't have.
Mm-hmm.
Above all, well, certainly multifamily housing, because the smaller, the more affordable it's going to be. And then the next defining aspect is rental housing. We don't have enough rental housing. So, the more smaller footprint, multifamily, most likely rental, the more I think we've accomplished. I mean, that doesn't mean that there aren't other housing types of smaller footprint that may be for sale as well, but those in that direction is where we need to go, because even people making 120% of our area median income cannot afford to buy a single family home on the island. So
perhaps this is tied into that, but with more and more of the island's workforce coming to work over the Agate Pass Bridge, how would you try to reimagine transportation on Bainbridge? Car share, buses, ferries, bike lanes, or something else?
I think it has to be a combination of a lot of things. We're never going to be able to afford to build enough infrastructure. Well, there's a combination of things. Even if we could afford to build enough bike lanes, for example, to get everybody moving across the island, not everyone's going to get out of their car into a bike, and not everybody's going to who works here is going to be able to live here, no matter how much effort we put into this. I mean, I think we're extremely committed to get as many people who work on the island living here as possible, but we need more, we need more bike lanes and sidewalks and all sorts of ways to move people, and trails to move people on foot and bike, sure, but we need transit too. And I would really like to see better transit on and off the island as well, better transit around the island. It's got to be a combination of things. It's got to be, and we've got it as well. This doesn't help with traffic, but it helps with carbon. We need to be, as we've started doing, we need to be putting in the infrastructure for electric cars and supporting that changeover. But it's going to be a lot of things. And yes, car sharing, encouraging programs. We now have a new, I'm going to forget her title. You may know, you were at the meeting when she was introduced, but we now have a new coordinator implementer for the sustainable transportation plan. And her background is programmatic above all, is helping create programs for big organizations to get people into things like ride sharing and getting them out of their cars. So I hope that's the way we're moving.
Would you support a new Bainbridge Bremerton foot ferry route to better connect South and North Kitsap?
I absolutely support the exploration of it. Right. I don't know whether I would support what it looks like until I would know what it looks like, but I would support exploring every single possible way of addressing the situation, including that. Yeah.
How can the needs of both Bainbridge's residents and visitors best be balanced?
That's a really important one. And I've really struggled with that in the conversations we're having around the Winslow sub-area plan is how much the vision how much the island wants the vision to be about visitors versus, our enjoyment and use of downtown. I think actually, part of the key is encouraging visitors to be on foot to the extent we can control and encourage that. I think that's helpful to keep down the impact on ferries and, ferry usage and cars. I think we've seen some of the impacts we've seen have been difficult, have been honestly the development in the South End, Loomis Center becoming more and more of a destination. I think we need to watch out that we aren't sending, it's not good for our, it's not consistent with our climate action plan or just about any of our planning to be bringing people on the island and sending them deeper away from Winslow as well, except for, of course, our couple of very key destinations, Blodell and the Japanese Memorial, of course. But I think just keeping visitors on foot, hopefully, you know, again, if we're increasing the way we're moving people around with transit downtown, if we do wind up with any sort of a moving people downtown, as we've talked about, but not sending them further out into the community, that could be helpful. Yeah.
Just for clarification, when you're saying on foot, do you really mean non-motorized private transportation in terms of if they're biking around the island or if they're taking a bus to Linwood, for example?
Yeah.
Those are okay?
Oh, of course, biking, absolutely. But I should be saying non-vehicle. I mean, getting people over here out of their vehicle, exactly, and not creating intense tourist-oriented development outside of Winslow. That I think is a problem for a number of reasons. Yeah.
Can you explain your understanding of the role of a city council member in promoting economic development?
Well, I mean, a healthy economic environment is critical to the functioning of, you know, it's a balanced community. I don't think that there's a couple of things. I think that, you know, I think Bainbridge is an unusual model. I don't think that we are a typical city. I think a typical city model is grow your economic base. You would want, I mean, this is obvious. You'd want box stores and whatever. And we're looking to grow the city gets its revenue from big commercial development. So we're not that model. So we have a little bit of a strange relationship with our commerce that way. But I think that obviously our job is to support our businesses, and to have you know, a good, healthy environment for them, because again, these are our residents and this is their livelihood. And again, we're all interrelated, and we want a healthy living downtown, et cetera. So I just think I don't see it as that we're trying to grow a big tax base. And I don't see us as having, the other thing that's a little different about us is because we don't have big coffers like a lot of cities, we're not able to make major investments the way a lot of cities do. So I see it as slightly different than other communities. I'm not sure what else to say other than that. We're supportive, but I don't feel like we're a major player the way a lot of cities are, where we're trying to strategically grow big commercial districts. I think it's a gentler relationship.
Well, so that swings into the chamber part of it. What role can the chamber play in the community to best help Bainbridge?
Yeah. Well, I think you guys do a really good job by being in our relationship between the city and the chamber. What I've seen happen over the last couple of years is serving as a great communicator on policy issues and so forth, being able to bring the voice of, so I'm not sure if this is what you mean, but to me, being able to bring the voice of affected businesses to the city and being able to help businesses understand city policy. I mean, so I see that the chamber as being that, helping build that relationship, so there isn't as many misunderstandings, as much as a wall there, and there can be more coordination. And I haven't seen that in the past. So, and I think that's important for anytime policies are being created that affect stakeholders. There are a lot of stakeholder groups that don't have a voice or a structure in which to participate. So, yeah.
What strategies do you intend to use to promote civic engagement and boost citizen participation in our local government?
Well, so to me, where the community most wants to be involved is in determining what the community looks and feels like, et cetera, like these major planning processes. Where I'm most concerned about is when important decisions are being made, like in the comprehensive plan and the Winslow sub-area plan. So this is kind of, I think, when these periodic things come, this is one of the times that's so important that people get involved. And that's why right now, that's why I wanted to be sure we had a steering committee. We were about to not have a steering committee, it seemed, going into this. And we now have a steering committee, and I'm working on that steering committee. And that's the main focus, is making sure that people have ongoing understanding what's happening and understand where they can key in and be informed and give us feedback on what they want along the way. So above all there, I'm always concerned about when anything is when the council's making decisions that the community has a chance to weigh in, and we're not rushing through. And I do worry that recently we've been moving things through a little. We're moving really fast and having shorter meetings, which I think is wonderful, but we need to be really careful that we don't move too fast and we're not losing transparency and taking the time to hear the community, as just happened. I felt like almost happened with the short-term rental ordinance. And I'm really glad we just this week said, let's take one more meeting. So I'm a big believer on the community understanding what's happening. I think one of the big concerns is we just don't have a press that is actually reporting on what's happening, and so the community doesn't know. So I guess, I want the community involved. I want them to know what's happening. I'm always going to be an advocate for giving them an opportunity to be heard. And I think the city is doing more than they ever have in communicating the best we can through the city manager's report, through our mailer, et cetera. But there's some missing pieces as to how keeping the community informed as to where their opportunities are.
I'm also going to push back a little bit for the Chamber newsletter, now hitting 3,000 households every week.
I know. It's absolutely true, and that's what everybody says. And I have to say, I'm sorry that the Chamber has to fill a void.
Okay,
you're right.
If you received $1 million grant to use for the city in any way you wanted, what would you do with it and why?
It would be for an affordable housing project. That's as easy. But one of the most important things to me to see done, and whether it could get done in my next term, I think really what will happen is I hope that it will be mostly built, or at least underway, is that the city will be building an affordable housing project. And I would never have imagined we would be doing that in my last term on council. But it has become so clear as we understand what is and isn't possible with affordable housing, who can be incented to build. A for-profit developer cannot ever build a 100% affordable project, a project that is for people who make 60% of area median income, people who work in our restaurants and who are teachers' aides and nursing aides and so, but we need these people in our community, and they're not, and our businesses are not finding that they can keep people on staff, and we want them here. And so the only entities that are going to build these types of projects are going to be governmental entities and some nonprofits, and our nonprofits aren't going to be capable of building the sort of projects that the city can. So it's just a no-brainer. $1 million would go to help us do that.
You may have started preempting the final question, but back in the real world and with only limited time, money, and resources, to tackle the challenges of Bainbridge life, can you name 3 specific actions you intend to take as a council member that you hope will define the legacy of a 4-year term of office?
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad that I can pretend I didn't say the other one so I can get some more in. Well, I want to have a comprehensive plan done that is based on, fact, and it is defensible, and it's addressing the things we need to address, and is maintaining the core principles that we've been carrying through over the last iterations, but still adapting to change. And I want to see that we have this Winslow sub-area plan accomplishing the things we've been talking about, that we can legitimately say we're accomplishing them, while all of the things we've been talking about, that is going to have the capacity for creating affordable housing and mandatory inclusionary zoning to make that happen, but still retaining the character of the island. And I want to believe finally, somehow, by the end of the next 4 years, we're going to start to really understand the carrying capacity of the island so we can stop fighting amongst ourselves about how many people can we bring to the island in the next 20 or 40 or 60 years, because we're going to have a really hard conversation with the region and the state as climate change brings more and more people here. And if it's 100,000 people, okay, well, I don't think we can, but it needs to be fact-based. So we need to complete the groundwater management plan. We need to do whatever we need to do so that we all are working with the same facts. So we stop, again, we can act as one unified community in our planning and base it on facts and stop speculating and fighting over it. Yeah.
So that's one.
No, that was 3 things.
Okay.
No, I mean, if we have a great, I could go on. I said, I want to build an affordable, I want an affordable house, 100% affordable housing project. I want to solve all those things in the Winslow sub-area plan. I want to understand the carrying capacity of the island, which includes a completed groundwater management plan. And I want to have a comprehensive plan that solves all those things. I can go on. I mean, I don't know that I could do these things. I want to fix a lot of holes in the code that we've been talking about. I mean, there's a lot of things I'd like to do, but if those things, that one thing would be an amazing thing. If we could be prepared for the state mandates that are going to continue to come down, including the one that we're going to have to take on in the next planning cycle that was passed in this past year, that is an absolute impossibility for this island to bear, either environmentally or financially. Then, that's something we've got to be prepared for.
Which is what specifically?
1110.
Which is
going to,
who don't follow nerdy.
Basically rezone, right? So the state has been trying to basically start forcing rezone, start to take over local zoning, which is something that historically in this country has been the purview of cities and counties, their own zoning. And this has been happening in California and Oregon and other places. And the state was trying, and it wasn't happening and passing for a number of years. And now they've got they had to whittle it down, but they finally passed 1110 this past year. Our legislators, our representatives, all were against it. I mean, this is not an unpopular position to be against this legislation because it's generic and broad brush, and it's an attempt. It doesn't create affordable housing. It takes over our zoning. But I'll give an example. If it says that on a parcel that's now zoned for one lot, one house, you now must build 4 houses, or you may build 4 houses. That doesn't mean they will be affordable. So if you have a waterfront property, let's say you can do this because of course you need sewer, but let's say it's a sewered waterfront property and it has one house on it that's worth like $4 million. And now someone is able to tear that house down and build 4 houses. Why would those be 4 affordable homes? Now you could build 4 $2.5 million small houses on the water. And this is why almost all the cities across the state were strongly opposed to this legislation, because it's forcing rezoning on them, which is forcing them to redo their comprehensive plans. They may or may not have the infrastructure for this. We don't have this infrastructure. And what the state has said is basically, oh, well, we'll give you till the next planning cycle to figure the infrastructure out, et cetera. No excuses beyond that. So this would put rezoning, upzoning in places where we don't have sewer. We would have to basically build a sewer plant to accommodate some of this. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars of infrastructure and all sorts of other impacts on us. And it's not just us, it's cities across the state. One person, when I was in Olympia at the Association of Washington Cities conference where people were talking about this, was saying she was actually from a jurisdiction where this was going to have the opposite effect, because there was an area in her jurisdiction. I don't remember where it was, but I think it was probably near Transit, somewhere in King County. That the concern was there were single family homes there that were somewhat affordable now, and if this was now going to be multifamily, this would basically gentrify the area. It would have the opposite effect. So the legislature sitting down in Olympia, whatever, just putting out these broad brush generic pieces of legislation that would just apply to every city in the entire state that will not, maybe somewhere in the middle of the state where land is cheap, could result in affordable housing, will not result in affordable housing, but have other really significant effects on jurisdictions. Anyway, so my point is, when this is where we're headed, it's really important that we as a community, because we are an all island city with very unique limitations. It's just a fact. We need to understand what our facts are so that we're working with good facts when we have to explain to the state, we can't do that. So what are we going to do? Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for the time, for stepping up to try and help our community as a candidate. With what words would you like this interview to end?
Well, thank you so much. I guess more than anything, thank you so much for doing this and stepping up for creating this forum for us candidates, actually, quite frankly, Stefan. And I've been honored to serve the community, and I hope to be able to have the opportunity to continue to serve.
Thank you very much.
All right.